Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host, Liam, aka Himvar, and today I am chatting with another author. This is the one and only Scott Oden. I guess he's on this side if I'm
Yeah.
doing it, but yeah. And so Scott is gracious enough to come and chat with me. I haven't done a lot of these recently, but Scott is just his Grimnir Saga. Is that what it's normally
Yeah, I
called?
call it the Grimnir Saga. It's
Okay, so
publisher calls it the Grimnir series. I'm like,
okay,
so
that doesn't sound as good.
it
Um,
does. Yeah.
So that is coming to a close, right, with book three here.
It is.
Um,
It's the
yeah,
last book comes out next Tuesday, as of this taping. So
yeah. So that's the 19th. Um, yeah, I was just telling Scott right now I haven't finished the Doom of Odin. I did get an advanced copy, of course, but I haven't finished it yet. But I have read the first two books in the saga, and I know some people are really. I think this is weird, but I think when some people only like to read the series when it's finished. So
and the numbers seem to be showing that more people are buying the entire series than
mhm.
have bought it in the past. So
I mean,
I get it.
some sales are better than no sales, right? But I mean, like,
Oh
it's
yeah.
still
Oh
like
yeah.
kind of a, I don't know. I just don't get that to me. I'd rather, I don't really binge series. So maybe that's why it doesn't make sense to me. I'd much rather read as they release. Um,
It's I pick them up as they go. So it boggles my mind. I think it's all due to like George R. R. Martin and
yeah.
Patrick Rothfuss.
Rothfuss. Yeah. Yeah, that probably is a big factor, actually. So, I was actually watching someone else's stream the other day, and they were doing what they call reading sprints, which is just they read as a group, kind of, and talk about it afterwards.
Oh,
I don't really ever participate. Um, I'm just over here in my own little corner, but I was watching. I was in the chat, and I mentioned that I was reading Twilight of the Gods, and the guy hosting is like, I've never heard of that. But someone else did actually. It's like, hey, that series actually ends like she said like next month, and I was like, oh, it's this month actually, like next week. But and so I guess I don't know why that happens, but word somehow gets around when a series is ending a little. So
it's weird how it spread. I'm on social media a lot, but I rarely ever talk about it. The books. I'm on there more for just hanging out with other writers.
mhm.
But it's like the word spreads on its own, and it's weird to watch it. So
Yeah, yeah, I imagine that's something's going on. But yeah, we should probably talk about a little bit about that. So I read a Gathering of Ravens. Actually, I don't remember when I read this. Sometime ago, and so uh, really enjoyed it. I thought it was cool actually especially when I got to Twilight of the Gods, is that it's the story is not um, they almost work like standalones in some way. I mean, like they're set pretty far apart. So uh, and that's because our main character here, he's an orc, right? It's the redemption of the orc, right?
yes, and he's only an orc because a friend of mine double dog dared me to work orcs into Norse history and make it not suck.
Yeah, no, you did a good job. And it is
I leave that for
possible.
everybody else to but I did the best I could with it. So.
Yeah, well, that's funny because I mean, like orcs. I mean, as a species, they're pretty stereotypical fantasy these days, right? I mean, you got your pig snout, like early D&D ones. You got your green ones from things like I think Warhammer did the green ones first, maybe,
Yep.
and then Warcraft followed, um, and then of course you got your Tolkien orcs, which is he's really the creator of orcs, at least as far as I'm aware. He got the name kind of from Beowulf, but I mean, like in reality, when you're reading Beowulf, they're like Orkneas. So like, what does that mean? We don't know. So like they have their guesses. It's some sort of monster, obviously, but like,
Well, here's some weird trivia. Most people when they think of orcs, they think of the green-skinned orcs
mhm,
from Warhammer. The only reason we have that was one of their miniature painters in the late 70s, early 80s, when Warhammer was a tabletop strategy game,
mhm.
decided to paint his army of orcs green. And it got picked up by White Dwarf magazine. They showed his his army of green orcs and greenskins became canonical. So
Well,
it's yeah, it
that's
was
a pretty cool bit of history there.
that took a lot of digging to find that. So because nobody knew where greenskin came from. And finally some guy that worked for uh, Black Library, I think it was Black Library. He was around at the time that they made it. And he's like, yeah, this guy just decided to paint his orcs green, and that's where that comes from.
So just some random guy just changed a lot of history somehow.
Yeah, one of their model makers on their payroll. So,
Okay, well, that's very interesting. That's really silly, actually, which just kind of goes to show like how the world can be sometimes, I guess. So,
yeah.
But yeah, no, it's if I'm remembering correctly, a Gathering of Ravens is set about right around the turn of the millennia, right? It's like 1000 AD, I
Yeah.
think. It's literally 1000 AD, right?
Between 999 and 1014.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's right. And then and that's a good one. This starts in Denmark, if I'm remembering correctly, goes to England and then over to Ireland.
Yep.
And
In
your
time
two
to
main characters.
participate in the Battle of Clontarf.
Yeah. And two main characters are Grimnir and then also, well, how would you say her name? I would say like a
I
time.
always call it Etain. I know that's not how it's actually pronounced because it has too many diacritical marks over it.
Uh-huh.
But in my mind, I just call her Etain.
So, well, that works. Etain works.
Yeah.
I can't remember how I said it in my review. If assuming I did say it.
I think you said it accurately.
I try. My interest lies in like medieval language and stuff, but so no, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think I like. It's funny because before starting my channel, I wouldn't describe myself as reading. This is a term I don't really like, but like Viking historical fiction, right? But like I actually do, like I actually do like reading that stuff, and that's fine because it's cool stuff. But and then Twilight of the Gods takes place in 18, I think, for the most part.
Yeah.
So which was interesting, I thought. Is like that's like more high medieval, you got like essentially Vikings, but that's like the very tail end of the Viking age, so we normally don't think of that. And then even had like Geats. I was like, well, the Geats are probably not around at the time, or at least not what we think of as Geats, at least. And I was like, well, that's fine, I don't care, like and it's kind of like a Northern Crusade, but not the Northern Crusade you're thinking of over in like the Baltic area. But yeah, I don't know, I thought it was fun.
It was supposed to be that, but I got sidetracked because for some reason, I just wanted Geats in the story. And so I made a little pocket universe where they survive based on Grimnir's protection.
No, yeah, that was cool. I like that, right? I was like, 'cause it definitely works, right? Because normally they kind of just like fade out of history and in reality, right? So I mean, it's just like this works, I feel like, perfectly fine. And Grimnir being their little kind of god almost, like their protector, works. And I like Grimnir in that role. It's kind of like King Conan almost. So
See, to me, he really became a much better character in Twilight of the Gods. It's like he was less angry, but the story is more claustrophobic. It doesn't sprawl like the first one did. And it feels a lot different, and it feels almost like the walls are pressing in on him. But he's more pronounced in my mind in that particular book. So less of a caricature and more of a character.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, I definitely like Grimnir because he's not like he's not cliche. I feel like you could easily have written into just this huge cliche. Whether he's just like some weird funny cloning, or you know what I mean, just like this weird orc, like he's not. And I think he's a very fun character. He's very grim. I mean,
Yes.
his name works. But
and a strange sense of humor. He has a
weird
sense of humor.
Yeah, but I think especially in that second book, I think it really works there with those Geats, or part of me wants to say yachts. I keep on like warring in my head, like between the Old English pronunciation and the modern English pronunciation. But he fits, I think, really well with those Viking characters. And I think Disa is like a fun foil in a sense, or
Yeah.
like companion even to him.
Mhm.
It's very different than in the first book.
I've seen the comparison made that it reminded at least one or two readers of the Hound and Arya from Wheel or Game of Thrones.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I've never seen it, so I'm like, okay, that could be. Yep. So yeah, possibly.
No, yeah, I could see that. Yeah, it's not a bad comparison.
Yeah.
That's a yeah, but no, they're great characters, and I like Disa is very very rough around the edges, and I forget at times almost that she's pretty young. I think.
Yeah, she's
So,
15, about to be 16.
yeah,
So,
I mean that's essentially an adult, at least
yeah.
when you're speaking in
It just gets creepy
situation.
back then when if you try to make them historically accurate to what age they would have been. I don't like writing about 12-year-olds. She'd be off getting married at 12, 13, 14, something like that. And that just doesn't really appeal to the modern reader as much as it does the historically accurate reader. So,
Yeah, no, I can. Yeah, I mean I like reading history and stuff like that, and yeah, that stuff is weird. And so like I can see why you wouldn't go with something like that. So, and you have to have an audience that's like not weirded out the entire time they're reading it. So
well, when I started writing Gathering of Ravens, I swore that I would never show the I would not write an orc that has an attraction to human females. So because that's not where I wanted to take him, and it was just a little strange to me. But I would get emails about, when is he going to, be attracted to them? Well, he thinks of humans as pets,
yeah,
especially females. He won't be able to be around a human male because the testosterone would be too much and they would try to kill each other. But human females, he treats them like kittens.
yeah. No, I appreciate that. I didn't even. I mean, that's he. That's kind of like said or like yeah, that comes off for sure. But yeah, I didn't even realize again that there was like no romance here.
Yeah,
so,
there's no romance until the third book, and then it's one of his own people.
Yes, I'm looking. Ooh, okay.
Yeah. Ooh, she's like, wow. It's not like either Attain or Disa. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I look forward to finishing the Doom of Odin, and that one actually takes place. Is that the 15th century?
It's right at 14th century, right at the eve of the Black Death.
Oh, okay.
Literally days before Black Death strikes Italy. So,
okay.
At the beginning of the story, Messina is already lost, and the plague is crawling up the boot of Italy. So, and he's right there at the crest of the wave. So,
yeah, that was an interesting, very disorienting for the first couple pages start there.
Well, I mean, like I told you in the pre-setting, it's no spoiler to tell you he starts out dead.
So, yeah, I thought that was cool. I was like, I think it's the spirits. They say something about like Yol, and I was like, wait, like are they just like making fun of him, or is it like actually? Is it...
No, the most of the afterlife for his people, I stole bits and pieces from Valhalla, but it's a really weird, twisted Valhalla, and they're stuck on an island in the middle of a underground or underworld lake, and that lake is filled with spirits that will eat them alive. But as long as they are on that island, they can die and come back, just like in Valhalla. So, and they make great use of that.
Yeah, that's not very pleasant, but to be completely honest, most of like that Germanic afterlife idea is not very pleasant.
It's great if you're like psychotic.
Yeah, right. So like, yeah, that's the right word for it.
Yeah.
Tom Shippey would call it a death cult.
If you're a murder hobo, you're in you're in the right spot there.
Right. Yeah. No, that's interesting. That's very cool. I again, like I said, I look forward to reading more of the Doom of Odin. Hopefully, I write a column for a newspaper, and I in that column normally not this last issue because I did kind of like a fantasy year in review type of thing.
Oh, I
But
read that. Yeah.
yeah, and so but normally I kind of have like a theme and I talk about this theme as it relates to some new releases, whether they're upcoming or just released. They're normally just released, but and I was hoping to talk about the Doom of Odin for my next one, so I got to get it done, and then so
Get cracking.
yeah. All right. So
What are we looking for? Get to reading.
yeah. All right. So, but no, yeah, I look forward to reading that. So, and even though I said earlier I'm not one of those people that waits till a series is done, the Doom of Odin coming out did push me to like, oh yeah, I need to read Twilight of the Gods. So, like,
That poor book got forgotten so bad. It came out right as the pandemic hit, and bookstores shut down. Last I saw it, it had its own little end cap in Barnes and Noble, and then they shut them all down.
Oh man.
So
That's yeah.
Yeah.
I think that happened for a few books, which is unfortunate.
2020 was rough on books coming out. So
yeah. Geez. Well, glad that's kind of behind us. So,
for right now, hopefully there's not another one coming. If there is, I need to write faster.
Right. No. Speaking of writing faster, no. But no, yeah, and it's funny because I think I can't remember if A Gathering of Ravens may have been the first thing I read by you. I can't remember. I might have read something in Whetstone because you have a couple stories in Whetstone, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, two stories before they put the ban where I couldn't send them anymore. So,
but they're like, Scott, are you
really my fault?
Like,
but yeah, I got one. It's just basically a scene with the main character of my very first novel, Barca, the Phoenician. Mm-hmm. And then I have one that's it's actually the sequel to a story that I wrote for Skelos 2. When that was, do you remember that? Do you remember Skelos?
I know of it. I don't think it's like alive right now, though, right?
No, I think it died a few years ago. But it was a great little magazine for 2 or 3 issues. But I'd written a story for that had orcs in it. So, and then I wrote a follow-up that I just left on my hard drive, and I pared it down and sent it off to Whetstone. So, and then right after that, they're like, well, you know, we can't have like people that have novels writing for us now. I'm like, oh.
Well, it got me in. No, I should be appearing, I think, in this next issue this Friday, but only after trying for 2 years. So,
hey, they're a tough market.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. Yeah, they have the label amateur, right? Because I mean, that's a fair label, but I mean, it's good stuff still. So,
yeah. Apparently, some umbrage was taken since I'm not an amateur, and so they tried to use, well, you know, amateur is in someone who loves, you know, and I'm like, I don't actually make a living from writing.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. No, it's funny. So your earlier novels I haven't read, and I think, let's see, you had Men of Bronze, Memnon, and the
Lion of Cairo.
Okay, yeah.
Now,
so which one of those was first?
Men of Bronze was the very first thing I wrote.
Okay.
And it is a straight historical fiction, no fantasy elements to it. It started its life as a Conan novel for Tor Books, but then Tor Books ended the Conan line when I only had 3 chapters.
Oh, darn.
So I had to figure out what to do with it. So I looked around. It took me about a year to figure out what to do with it. And I made it into an actual, like a historical novel. At the time, I had a lot of trouble creating original worlds. So every time I would create an original fantasy world, it was just, to me, it was horrible. It was nothing but cliche after cliche after cliche. So at the time, I was really interested in things like ancient Rome, ancient Egypt. And I just looked around and found a spot in ancient Egypt where the story like that would fit. It still has shades of Conan, but it took the sorcerer out and replaced it with just political intrigue and lots of violence. So, but
It's very typical of well, Sword and Sandal, I guess, in this case too.
it
So
is, yeah. It's then Memnon is actually inspired by Harold Lamb, of all people. It's a blending of Harold Lamb and Mary Renault.
okay, I
So
haven't
it's
read any Mary Renault.
oh, you should read Mary Renault. She funny thing, she is the only contemporary fantasy author that Tolkien ever read and enjoyed. She was a student of his when she was at Oxford,
Oh,
or he was her tutor or something like that. Whatever he did in his spare time.
yeah.
And she had sent him a fan letter after she read The Lord of the Rings, and he said that was his favorite piece of that type of mail that he had received up to that point. And then he had read both of her Theseus novels, and he thought those were fantasy. That was fantasy to him, and it was the fantasy of the highest order. So,
Wow, that's pretty cool.
yeah, but you definitely need to read her.
I did. I don't even know if I've heard of her, to be honest. So,
oh my goodness, she has a trilogy on Alexander the Great that for a very long time was the cream of the crop for Alexander biographies. Even though it's novelized, she went to great lengths to keep it as accurate as she could. She does sort of deify him a little, but she took a lot of the stories from various sources, novelized them, dramatized them, and wrote them out. And still my favorite one of hers is one called The Praise Singer. And it's the life of Simonides of Chios. And you'll only know him because he is the guy that wrote the epitaph for the Spartans at Thermopylae.
Okay, yeah.
Tell it in Sparta, stranger passing by, here obedient to their laws we lie. And for the longest time, that was the only gravestone the 300 Spartans had at Thermopylae. So,
that's pretty cool stuff. I'll have to look her up. It's funny. There's like everyone knows the Lovecraft circle, but there seems to be like a kind of a Tolkien circle that is very like not well known by any means. I mean, because like I thought of I read a book recently. Oh, what the heck was her name? It was like Jill Patton Walsh, I think. And she was the daughter, I think, of Unwin, or she was related somehow to the publisher of his books, and so she was tutored by Tolkien. And so Tolkien, like, it came out much later in his Finn and Hengist stuff, that was published after his death. Like how he tries to rectify the Finn episode in Beowulf and with like the Finnsburg fragment and stuff like that. Well, she tells it in story form, and it came out in like the 1960s, I think. Right? Oh, wow. And so she was probably told that idea by Tolkien, right? Yeah. And so Tom Shippey realized that. He mentioned it in some like obscure lecture I was listening to, and I was like, oh, I should go find that obscure book. And so I did, and it was pretty hard to find, but I did. It's written for kids almost, it's like a juvenile, I guess. And so it was a good book though. So
you're a philologist in training, correct?
Yeah, in training, that's the keyword or keywords there.
So I guess you're still in school getting all your That's interesting. So you'll be the American Tolkien.
Well, I can try. I am starting off way down here where he seemed to start. He started learning Latin when he was like 4 or something like that. So I mean, like, he's way up there compared to me. But but it's funny when you mentioned that, because you mentioned, I think this was probably a while ago now, maybe last year sometime. You mentioned Arthur Gilchrist Roeder.
He is the actual American Tolkien.
yeah, right. It's not me, guys. And so, which I do like writing or incorporating stuff into my stories. In fact, the one that should be coming out with Whetstone, I always say should, just in case they're just like, never mind, last second. So,
they don't do that. No,
I know, but like
you'll be in there.
I just get scared. But it's called The Love of Words, actually, and it's like, what if a philologist was a sorcerer? Basically, that's the idea. Kind of. So,
I'll look for that one.
Anyways, so I don't mention the word philology ever, and it's kind of he's like kind of a codecologist too, which is the people who make like codices. But I don't mention that either. But anyways, yeah, you mentioned Broder on the Whetstone Tavern Discord, I'm pretty sure, and I was like, that guy sounds awesome, and so
Yeah.
I'm gonna go read him. And so I haven't read all of it, but I read some of, is it called Art in Beowulf or Beowulf? It's something like that.
The Art of Beowulf.
Yeah, the Art of Beowulf, which opens with a Tolkien quote.
Yeah. It was his answer to Tolkien Monsters and Critics.
Yeah, and it's a good answer. It's
Yeah.
I've liked what I've read of that. And then I've read In the Grip of the Minotaur, which he co-wrote, I think, with
Farnham Bishop.
Yeah. And then I've read some, not all of his Faded and Sercomon stories. So
Yeah.
I like those a lot.
It was a sad thing though. He stopped writing fiction after Bishop died.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Bishop died in the 50s. He completely stopped writing fiction after that.
Darn, that's a shame.
And he got caught up in the Red Scare out in California. He refused to sign basically an allegiance document, and so he got blackballed for a while. But then he survived that. But yeah, there are stories in Berkeley about him doing the same thing that Tolkien would do, where you get together with a bunch of students and everybody's speaking Old Norse and they're trading stories. So,
that sounds like a good time. My own Norse is not nearly that good, but I was proud of myself, actually. I was talking with I was at a church thing, but I was talking with some guy, and some other guy just comes up and they start speaking Dutch to each other. I'm like, what the heck is going on? But one guy had lived in like Belgium for a while, and the other guy was from South Africa. And I was like, I actually was able to follow the conversation pretty well. Now, Dutch is pretty close to English. I mean, for those unaware, it's insanely close, but all things considered. So, but still, I was like a little proud of myself. I was like, I pat myself on the back. I followed that conversation. I would not have been able to join the conversation, but I followed it. So,
well, you'll have achieved your Jedi Master role when you can have a conversation in Latin with James Ing.
Oh, does he? Oh, okay.
He's a Latin teacher.
Okay,
he speaks
yeah. Okay, that'd be pretty cool. My Latin's pretty poor too. I can recognize a lot of Latin words, I guess, but and I did study French for a couple of years too. But...
I speak English and bad English.
Well, that's fine. So English is a good language. I like it. That's actually where most of my interest lies. Is I like English because I speak it, and so like. I was like, well, because when I was growing up, I studied things more like Latin, and I liked the Irish stuff because I have some ancestors from over there and stuff. And I was like, you know what, this stuff is pretty foreign to me. So like Irish, I just can't. It's harder than French. Like what's with these things I don't say. And so like I was like, English though, that's a pretty useful language, and I like it. So might as well learn more about that. So that's kind of what pushed me into like Middle English and then Old English, and then from there it branched more into the Old Norse, and I'm hoping to take a class on Gothic this next semester. So and then hopefully I can read from my Poetry Thursday the Bagma Bloma, which is Tolkien's poem in Gothic.
Make sure when you show up for your Gothic classes that you have a big wide-brimmed hat and a cloak, and you just sit in the corner.
Yeah, well,
tell them you're Byronic.
Yeah. I think they'd get a kick out of that. So, but yeah, no, but yeah, Broder, I like Broder, and I like his. He's funny because he's not very, or at least from the bit I read from him, he's very much swashbuckling, not very dark at all. It's very fun though. I find him very entertaining.
He was one of Robert E. Howard's favorite writers, also from Adventure.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
that you can see. I guess. But...
Yeah, you can see little bits and pieces of, Howard never liked like Rome. He didn't, he never leaned toward the classical era. He liked the barbarians better. And
I mean, they're cooler.
Yeah, Broder goes toward the classic. But he mentions a couple of Broder's stories, I think, in his letters. So,
okay, Yeah, I haven't read like any of his letters. I need to read more of those, but um, it's funny that it always made me upset when or mad would probably be the proper word, but upset when I would be going to. I got a humanities degree, and they hardly ever talk about medieval stuff. Like they will when it's like Gothic architecture,
Yeah.
and they will kind of here and there, but like not much at all. Um, and so I was like, "Why are you guys skipping over all this stuff? This is the coolest stuff!" Like, yeah. Anyways, so but that's obviously my bias, of
Yeah.
course. So, um,
Hey,
I
it's a
was
good
just
bias to have.
yeah, I was just reading King Horn. Actually, I'm trying to finish, which is a 13th century romance, but um, it's where Tolkien got Westerness from.
Oh, okay.
So he pulls it straight from that. There's a king of Westerness in that story. Um, so, but anyways, yeah. So, but I like the historical stuff. I particularly I'm very partial to the northern
Yeah.
vein, but I like it all pretty much. I mean, right? The Faded and Sercomon stuff is like Akatania, like more. I mean, they do go to England and elsewhere and stuff, but
Yeah.
I do like that stuff, and I like ancient Egypt. I mean, everyone's got to like ancient Egypt and ancient Greece, right? I mean, like that stuff's cool. So
You'd think. Even ancient Rome is cool. So
yeah, right, yeah. Oh my goodness, I took so many. That was actually my other complaint too. Is like you never recover the medieval stuff, and I've taken this class on Rome how many times? Like I've read the Iliad how many times? I realize that's not Rome, but still, that was actually my other complaint too. Here, I'll just keep on complaining. Was
it's
that I had to read the Iliad like 5 times, literally, I think, in different
oh wow.
classes, and I never once read the Aeneid. I was like, what the heck? Why not? What is going on here? So, anyways, you
You need better teachers. That's what you
guys watching?
need.
So, um, I had some good teachers. That some of them, yeah, I definitely could be a little brush up on some things, but I always feel weird though when you're just like in a class and you're just like, should I be here? Like I feel like I know all this already. Like, should I really be in here? So, um, but
I mean,
yeah.
I have all of 2 quarters of college. So I started taking history and English in community college.
Mhm.
And I was probably 18, and I thought I knew everything. And I ended up getting asked not to come back. So I'm
Wow.
like, well,
You
I'm
must
just
have
going to
known
go write
everything.
books. I did. I knew everything.
There's the confirmation. He's like, this. You already know everything, Scott. Just don't come back.
Well,
No,
what was just BS to me is we were asked to write a in English. We were asked to write a scene from a common person's point of view about war. So I wrote a scene in a fantasy war set in trenches, and it was okay. I mean, it wasn't my greatest work, but it was a good 500 words of hack and slash. And I got an F because the teacher was by day was a Christian school principal and thought that was way too satanic. And I'm like, I'm going to go write books. Took me a few years.
Well, I mean, so that means you've been writing for a while.
I've been writing since I was 14 years old.
Wow. Okay.
I'm currently 56.
Oof. 56 years young, man.
Yeah, tell that to my hips.
Well, I mean, that's like my dad's age, so you could be my dad.
Oh,
But
oh.
so, oh
And
no,
I
Scott,
expire.
recover, please. But no, yeah, that's funny. I mean, you do have that sometimes with teachers. I liked the last the few teachers I had were pretty good. I'd write an essay and they'd be like, this. You could tell basically it was over their head. Like for example, I was in a civil rights class, civil war and civil rights kind of covered both. Um, and my final essay was on Charles Saunders. So like definitely not the wheelhouse of my art historian teacher essentially. So like but he was still fair. I didn't get an
Yeah.
F. So like which is nice, right? It is very frustrating when they're like, I don't agree with you, so I'm giving you a bad grade.
Yeah.
Type of thing. That's extremely frustrating.
It's like an opinion. It's like, how do you judge an opinion?
Right. Yeah. Or I remember, heck, I remember in one class, most of the writing was actually graded by the teacher assistants, and I did not like that. But like in my first like thing I wrote, it was allowed. Okay, like it was like basically I was writing a letter to a person, so it was like a person I knew. This person was fictional, I think, but still. So like essentially I could use whatever I want. So I use this stupid vocabulary because I just like using stupid vocabulary sometimes, which gets me in trouble with certain things. But and uh, and they're like, I don't know what these words mean. Like, and they marked me down for it. I was like, well, what, like you said, it's a fictional person, so it doesn't matter. Like, you're not the fictional person, and they're words, I promise. They're in some dictionary. They might not be in Webster's, but they're in some dictionary. And then, but I took the advice, right? And then the next assignment was like not super. It wasn't like that, anyways. It was more of like a journal type thing, and I used the word oeuvre, which is a French word that is
Yeah,
in English, right? It is very much an English word these days, and you see it in academic writing all the time.
yeah.
At least when I read academic papers, it's just, and they mark me off for it. I was like, what the heck? Like, what is this? Like,
Just because you don't know it doesn't mean it's wrong.
yeah, right. That's my thought. I was like, you just insulted yourself. What are you doing? Like, so, um, but anyways, yeah, it's just wow, I keep on getting distracted about the school stuff, but
Oh,
it's cool that you've been writing for so long.
yeah.
That's pretty inspiring, actually. So when did you get your first story published? I guess if I could ask.
First thing I ever published, I was 18 years old. I published
Oh,
just a little role playing game that was a complete ripoff of Robert E. Howard. I
wow.
know, shocking,
Ooh.
shocking. Yeah, what? Who? Yeah,
I
so
would
that
not have
was
been able to
very,
guess.
and it's like I paid for it myself. A friend of mine that worked at a newspaper helped me put it together on the old style layout boards. And then when he took the local paper, which was a weekly, over to be printed, he threw some copies of that on there and printed it off also on newsprint. And then we put this just ass ugly neon green cover on it. But the only redeeming quality of this game was it was drawn by a teenage Cully Hamner who drew the Blue Beetle recently that was made into a movie. He drew the original Red that they made into a movie with Bruce Willis. Yeah,
Wow.
his very first published work was my just
Well,
dumbass
that's
role playing
something.
game.
That's noteworthy.
That is
At
nowhere.
least that.
He was 2 years below me at high school. So,
Huh. That's
and
pretty cool.
this was back when he had long, flowing red hair, and
Oh,
all the girls wanted to touch
beautiful.
it, and now he's bald as they get.
Well, that happens. But I
It
see you
does.
kept your hair, so
Yeah, I cut
um,
mine because mine is full and very, very, flowing.
yeah. So I can't. Are you from Texas,
Oh
or
no, no, I'm from Alabama.
you're from Alabama? It's close. Okay, I realize
I
I'm a
mean,
little
it's
south
a
of you.
good drive.
Okay, well,
I was
it's in
actually
the
born in Indiana.
vicinity of states, which I guess states are big things, But
Yeah,
um,
I was born
okay,
in southern Indiana though, and
okay.
my dad was from Alabama, mom was from Indiana. So
Huh.
when my dad he was like one of the last of that generation that could do anything. He survived getting shot in the back of the head with a shotgun in
Oh my.
1960.
What?
And yeah, the only thing that saved him is right when they fired, he had bent over, putting some fishing stuff in his trunk, and the bullets or the pellets went along his skull. Well, it made him where if he would go from warm weather to cold weather, he'd pass out.
Oh wow.
And you couldn't really do this as a firefighter in the
That's
north.
fair. Yeah.
So he took a medical retirement and came down south, brought us with him. So,
Huh. Huh.
and yeah, my mom she was a very much a stickler for making sure you pronounce things right. So it didn't really hold with my sister. My sister ended up with one of them there southern accents like that.
Oh.
And but luckily I somehow avoided most of it. When I get tired, I'll really start, howdy y'all.
No. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always funny that I like accents are cool.
Yeah.
But so I mean, You can speak English as whatever way you want, as long as I can understand you. I'm generally okay with it. So,
And that's how the Scottish exist.
and then you're just like, I don't know, can't I understand? That's different language. That's what some people say. So,
You're not speaking what the English I speak.
yeah, no, it's that's cool. Okay, I stayed in Alabama, but I'm blanking right now where I've stayed before.
It's
So
probably either Huntsville or Tuscaloosa.
I don't. It was somewhere down south. So
Mobile.
oh yeah, it might have been Mobile. Yeah, it was Mobile. Okay. I
Yeah.
was like, I lived in Florida and Texas at different times, and so we'd travel, to go visit people back in Florida. So I remember stopping like Mobile, I guess was the one
Yeah.
place I remember stopping. So
Mobile is like it's a trailer park, New Orleans. So
okay, well,
sorry, Mobile, I didn't mean to say it.
so yeah, okay. I don't know if they like that description.
It was changing my meds. That's what did it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. But no, that's cool. And so how did you get introduced to Robert E. Howard then?
My oldest brother, had a pretty extensive paperback library, and he had a set of the. Actually, he had two sets. He had a complete set of the, I think, Lancer Conans, and then he had a set of the Ace Conans. And if we ever touched his Lancer Conans, we would get, the crap beaten out of us. But we could read his Ace editions. So I randomly grabbed the first one day and started reading it. And I was 10 years old. I probably should not have been reading that, but I just finished The Hobbit and I was feeling my oats. So, so I grabbed that off his shelf and went and curled into a corner, and that was all it took. So,
wow.
I think I probably read that series, at least 2 or 3 dozen times, just as a kid.
Is there what's the word? The editing differences between the Lancer and Ace versions of Conan?
There's not really that much that I know. I've actually never read one of the Lancers.
Oh, okay.
Now that I've never actually picked one up, because if we did, we got beat up. So
yeah, right.
And so I've only read the Ace and I've read the Del Rey. So
okay.
And the Del Rey, I keep those next to me. I got one tucked over here, right next to where I write, because sometimes I'll just take it out and start flipping through it and look for inspiration.
Right. We need a pocket Del Rey so people can keep it in their jacket pocket like a Bible or something.
I've used a Gutenberg, the Australian Gutenberg, because they'll have the stories printed from Weird Tales, and I'll go through and if I need an extract for some reason, and I'll just use that, cut and paste it over into a document.
Yeah. Speaking of, I liked your the epigrams for the Doom of Odin, which was Howard's Samaria and then the Wanderer, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are good ones.
You can never go wrong using Howard as an epigram. He's got an epigram for everything.
Right. Yeah. I guess you can. Sure. Is that a challenge? No.
I dare you. I doubled up.
No. He's got some good stuff. I like it, and I like his poetry actually. I wasn't the biggest fan at first. The first thing I read by him was Samaria, I think actually, and then but it's grown on me. And he's not bad.
He's got he reminds it when I read it, and after I read his poetry, I read Norse poetry. It reminds me a lot of translated Norse poetry. So, he obviously was inspired by the Northern thing also. So you can see a lot of kennings in his work, especially in his descriptions and in his poetry. So,
yeah, that's something I'll have to keep more of an eye out for. He's an interesting character. I always I like Conan. I haven't read all the Conan stories yet. All right, I
envy you.
I'm one of the voices of Sword and Sorcery on YouTube, but I haven't read all of Conan yet. It just hasn't happened yet.
You don't
I
really need to read them back to back. You should
yeah
because he was a writer of his time. He would cannibalize himself.
yeah right.
And he did not write something that he thought would last forever. So
Yeah, I've read most of them at this point. I've read, if we're talking the Del Rey collections, so if anyone who hasn't read Robert E. Howard and wants to read Conan, there's 3 Del Rey collections you should get. Um, and that yeah, the Coming of Conan the Cimmerian is the first one. So I've read all that one. The second one is the Bloody Crown of
Bloody
right?
Crown.
Yeah, and
And
I've
the
read all that one.
Sword.
Yeah, and the Conquering Sword. So in the Conquering Sword, I've only read Red Nails. And that was recent. I wanted to read Red Nails. So I was just
you've not read Hour of the Dragon yet.
Oh, the Hour of the Dragon's actually in the Bloody Crown. So
is it? Okay.
Yeah, so I read the Hour of the Dragon.
So you're missing Shadows of Zambula.
Yes, that's one of them. And then is Beyond
the Black
River?
Beyond the Black River, I think Jewels of Gwalar.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I've read all of Cole though. I thought that'd be fun. I kind of put that in between some of the Conan stories. So, and I really like, if you go to my about section on my YouTube channel, there's a quote that references the Mirrors of Tuzan Thune. That quote, I don't say who it's from, but it's actually from my fellow booktuber Raph Bluetax, who just said that as a joke once. So, but yeah.
Have you read Bran McMorn?
Only the Cole one, I think. That doesn't Bran McMorn appear in a Cole story? Yeah.
Well, Cole appears in the Bran McMorn story.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So only that one. I think I'd like just about it all. I mean, I've read the Solomon Kane poems, for example, as well, but I haven't read the actual stories either. So
you would enjoy Worms of the Earth, Bran McMorn.
Yes, I would. I'm sure
that's most likely his best story that he ever wrote. Period. Out of all the story, that's my opinion. Everybody else will have a different story, but to me, that is him at his just absolute best. Between that and his Crusader stories, the Crusader stories are awesome, and he was writing the Crusader stories when he invented Conan. And he was getting frustrated because he could not get a story accepted by Adventure. Same place that Broder and Harold Lamb were being published. So
that's their loss.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he got good feedback on him. They're just like, try again.
Right. Yeah.
I don't criticize Howard too much, but his historical accuracy is sometimes a little loose. If the story needs something to be in a certain place, he has no problem putting it there for the sake of story. And so it's great from a writer's point of view, from a pulpster's point of view. But apparently the editor of Adventure was very much a historical accuracy stickler. So
that's okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that. That makes sense based off the stories I've read from Adventure.
Yeah.
But that's pretty interesting. But speaking of Crusades, I have read The White Lion.
Oh yes.
By you. There's supposed to be
That's
more.
a dinky little thing. I've never actually seen the paperback.
Yeah, it's tiny. If you want to compare it to A Gathering of Ravens.
Oh.
So
mess with me, I'll get my big brother to beat you
up. Right. No, yeah, it's tiny. I have another mass market book right here. This is
okay. It is mass market sized. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, so this is it's a novella, I think, right?
It's I want to say like 20,000 words, something like that.
Okay, yeah, I read this like on Father's Day, just as a little treat to myself. So thanks, Scott. But
Happy Father's Day.
Yeah. And I was on vacation actually too. So, this is a fun little excuse me. It takes place in Acre.
Yep.
Right at the it's like kind of the end, I guess, right?
It's about 2 years from the end of Acre.
Yeah. So you got that siege of Acre stuff going on the cover.
Man.
Yeah.
Classic art is like the greatest thing for book covers.
Right. Yeah. This is a good piece, honestly.
Oh my God. So. That was actually written originally. There was a Kickstarter for a bookstore in England and they had a bunch of people doing novellas that they were going to print in a dyslexic friendly fashion.
Huh.
But the Kickstarter didn't fund. So I'm like, well, I'll just release it myself. But yeah, that was a shame that they didn't get the funding. They had a completely different cover for it that was really awesome. And of course I couldn't use that. So
Right, yeah. Darn.
yeah. Well, they had a successful Kickstarter for the first wave of it, but for this wave it just didn't. I don't think it even reached half. So
oh, that's interesting.
yeah, but it didn't have the big name writers they had the first time around. I think the biggest name they had was a reprint by Bernard Cornwell. So.
Okay, you mean Scott Oden's not the biggest name around?
No, surprisingly, I don't bring in a crowd yet.
Oh darn! No, you definitely bring me in. I mean,
you're a crowd of one. There you go.
I think is likely. I mean, it's kind of depends on the day, of course, which is the way with everything. But when I read a book of Blades,
yeah,
I'd probably say your story is my favorite in there. So,
well, thank you.
So,
one or two.
The first one. I haven't read the second one yet, actually. So,
trying to remember what the second one was. I can't remember.
That's okay. But yeah, this is about the White Lion, I guess, is his nickname.
Incred of Antioch.
Yeah, and
it is a straight up homage to Robert E. Howard's historical fiction.
Nice. Yeah. I like it.
There's a theme to my career, starting from when I ripped off Robert E. Howard to make a role-playing game, is I write homages to Howard and everything. Even Memnon, which is, you can't see it as well. Mm-hmm. All of the battle scenes are very much Robert E. Howard. The Lion of Cairo is I still think the Lion of Cairo is the finest piece of Robert E. Howard pastiche you'll ever find. And a few people agree with me when they notice that's what it is. But it's an extension of his story, Gates of Empire. But it's with assassins. Let's see, Grimnir is Conan with a hangover and a toothache. But yeah, everything I write has some kind of Robert E. Howard connection, because I figure if I'm going to ride some coattails, I might as well ride the best. So.
No, that's a good idea. I've definitely tried to put a little bit of Robert E. Howard in my own writing. Now I'm not you, but no, he's got good stuff. Definitely good for inspiration. I honestly come away normally from reading his stuff pretty pumped, and we're like, well, that was awesome. Yeah. Now I'm gonna go try to make something at least half as awesome or something like that. So
yeah, it can be hard sometimes because you're sitting there like putting your words together, and it's like, oh, this is shit. Ugh, get away. And then you go back and read his, and it's like it's flowing like bloody wine. And you're like over there like.
Right. No, it's definitely writing is an interesting beast.
It really helps if you have multiple personalities.
So. Okay.
Because what are you doing? You're sitting in a room talking to yourself, telling stories to other parts of you.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Sometimes they'll help you with the story, and sometimes they won't. So.
That sounds fair too. Yeah, no, it's fun. It's fun telling stories. I feel like even at least in my case, they don't really get published very often, but or at least not yet. But so
you're still young. Give yourself time.
Yeah, no, I gotta not be so hard on myself. But no, yeah, it's I think it's some. I said once in. I think it was this actually when I reviewed this. I reviewed this, by the way, on my channel too. I don't know if you saw that.
I think I did see that one. Yeah.
And in that video, I called you like the best writer that's similar to Robert E. Howard. That's not Robert E. Howard, essentially. Like,
I'll take that. I'm good with that.
I probably butchered because that's a funny way to say it, but that's what I said essentially. Gregory Amato liked that too. Actually, he's an indie publisher, indie published author. It's true though. I mean, like I read your stuff and I'm just like, this is like kind of like Robert E. Howard, but written in this century. kind of, you know.
Well, we're both from small southern towns, so uh, it's just somehow, luckily, I managed to get 2 more decades on him. So,
Congratulations.
well, yeah, thank you. I didn't, luckily, I didn't have to go through what he did with
Right.
his
Yeah.
mother. Well, but except I did, but I was older. So,
Mm.
and but it was, it was interesting. But in early reviews of my stuff, people would say, "Oh, this writer's trying, to be Robert E. Howard," and they meant it as a slur, but I
Right.
took it as a compliment. So
Like, thank you.
yeah, it's like that's what I'm trying to do. You got it. Yeah. How awesome!
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I wouldn't say Robert E. Howard's my favorite author ever, but like he's good in my
He's
opinion.
good.
I mean, like, yeah, sure, he gets a little repetitive at times, I guess. Maybe. All right, that's if you're reading too much at once. But
His
for
biggest
like,
strength is he can write action better than anybody writing today.
yeah, you hear
And
that, writers
everybody who
out
writes action today owes that to him. So,
there? Okay, yeah, no, I agree. No, I
yeah,
agree. He's got, I don't know, he's really good at giving you the gamut of emotions, though. I feel like
yeah,
it's not just all blood and thunder Conan, or he'll switch it up, and um you'll get a story that's about Conan, but not so much from his point of view, or
yeah.
um and then yeah, you just get or like you'll see like I really liked Conan in oh my goodness, what's it called? A Witch is Born.
Oh yeah, a witch shall be born.
A Witch Shall Be Born. Okay, yeah, that I like Conan that one a lot. You
Yeah,
get to see an interesting parts of him, and he's still badass as hell, of course.
yeah.
So like,
So that's he can write badass better than anybody.
right, for sure.
He's really economical about setting a scene without using wasted words, and he's probably the best I've seen of any modern author who can almost write prose poetry. His work is poetic more so than just, he doesn't just tell you that you're seeing a sunset. He will describe the sunset economically in poetic language. So, but it's not the frilly poetry, it's the Norse poetry. So
Yeah, that's I don't think I've ever heard anyone, or maybe I have, describe it as poetic. But yeah, you're not
yeah,
wrong there. So,
he's
yeah,
but he would recycle plots, he would recycle elements of stories. He would probably, if he were alive today, would be the first to tell you that he didn't think it would have legs. It was meant to be consumed and then thrown away. So that's why, I mean, Hour the Dragon steals from something like 6 other Conan stories
yeah.
because it was meant for an audience that had never even seen a copy of Weird Tales.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
And I can't quite do the same thing because nowadays literature lasts forever.
right. Seems yeah. Oof.
But
Yeah.
I've
Wow.
recycled a lot of like snippets. Like if I start a manuscript and discard it, I save it, and then I'll recycle it into other things. So
That is a good idea and a good
yeah,
not waste of words essentially and
yeah.
time. Um, so
There's in Doom of Odin near the end, uh, there is an entire section I lifted from one of my aborted attempts at a Shavadas novel. Lifted it completely and rewrote the pronouns.
huh. Okay. Interesting.
Yep. Just,
Well, whatever works.
I think the only people that ever read the original version were, I think, Howard Jones and my agent. Yeah, because
Well,
me and Howard, we have the same agent, which is strange.
oh, really? Okay.
We do. We had the same publisher for a long time.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
the same agent. Both of our wives have the same name,
Oh.
and you've never seen us together in the same room.
Hmm. Interesting. That's funny.
We got some laughs out of that one. So,
Huh. Yeah, it's my dad. This is pretty much off topic, but along those lines. My dad, he I'm from his second marriage, And his first wife's name is Tracy, and my mom's name is Tracy as well. So,
Oh,
um,
goodness.
so it's just kind of funny. But
So your dad likes women named Tracy.
apparently, it turns out. I mean, who knew? So, um, yeah, no, it's interesting stuff. But that's St. Martin's, right? Is that
St. Martin's, yeah.
okay?
And this was my last book with them. They have what's called a right of first refusal for whatever I do next.
Okay.
So we'll find out once I do a proposal whether or not I'll still be with St. Martin's or if I'll be adrift on the publishing winds.
Adrift. Okay. Hopefully you get caught by something. And so,
Well, wouldn't be the worst thing to be, picked up by Bane or somebody like that. So,
right. Yeah. No. And I like Bane. Speaking of Bane,
yeah.
because Howard Andrew Jones is over there now, and I'm kind of buddies with DJ Butler and Christopher Rocchio, who, both have their connections to Bane too. So, and they got good books too. But so like, I don't know if you've read anything by them, but
yeah, I've been meaning to read the Empire of Silence.
Yeah.
My library has it, so I'm going to have to pick it up one day.
Yeah, definitely long compared to Sword and Sorcery.
Well, I read Dune after everybody was like, "Oh, it's so great, it's so great." I'm like, that would have been a great novel if Harold Lamb had written it.
Okay.
But I mean, that to me, it's like Space Bedouins.
Yeah.
All the good stuff happens off screen, so we don't see it. Was not even remotely interested in the character dynamics of Paul Atreides. I wanted to see sandworm fights.
I mean, that's fair. I mean,
yeah.
I like Dune. I read it very, very varied, very varied types of books. But
I just read the first one. I read it completely through, and I just threw it. I'm like,
oh, okay. Well, yeah,
sandworm fight.
Sun Eater definitely has those. It's kind of Dune inspired. It's Star Wars kind of inspired, and he's got some pulp sensibilities. You'll see that more in his short stories, though, in his novels, of course. So
that's why I like the Warhammer 40K books. It's like grimdark Star Wars.
Yeah.
I can get behind that. I like giant cathedral ships that blow up planets. Give me that.
So. Right. Yeah, and that's pretty cool. He does get a little bit more like there's some pretty cool stuff, honestly, in book 2 of Sand Year. That some people don't really like book 1, but they'll like book 2 a lot. But and speaking of space cathedral things, there's something like that in book 2. So anyways, it's probably not a spoiler. But so like, who cares about spoilers anyways? No,
yeah. I don't care about spoilers. You can't spoil something for me. So
right, yeah.
I'm pretty much, you can tell somebody the plot of Star Wars and they're like, "Oh, don't spoil it." It's like, folks, it's been out for 40 years. It's not going to spoil.
It's not right. Yeah, I think that comes from a lack of understanding, and mostly from like what a review is, or what it's supposed to be. But most people, at least on YouTube, look, they're never gonna watch this. We're an hour in. They don't have any idea what literary criticism is. So like even like their types of reviews are, and I'm not saying mine are great literary achievements by any means, but
I've listened to several of your reviews. So.
Yeah, I hope they're good. I like to make them short and informative, and hopefully about books that most people haven't heard of or read. But most of the ideas that the booktubers would do, they're like the reader response type of like criticism analysis type thing. But that means that you have an idea of form, essentially, and most don't. So in reality, they just don't actually do any form of literary analysis. So it's basically, I liked it, made me feel good. So.
I hang the whole spoiler thing on M. Night Shyamalan and the one he did with Bruce Willis, where he's dead.
Oh yeah, well, see, that's another thing too, like rereadability.
Yeah.
If it only works one time, that's novelty, essentially. That's not actually great.
Yeah,
might be cool, right? I mean, that's cool.
I've seen that movie one time. I've seen The Lord of the Rings. I've read The Lord of the Rings 100 and something times.
Right. Yeah.
because you cannot spoil that book. You're
Mhm.
not reading it for a twist at the end. You're reading it for the language and the depth and the world, the just the genius that went into it. Yes, Frodo throws the ring into a. Actually, he doesn't. Frodo recants, and Gollum grabs it and goes into the fire. I just spoiled it for thousands of people.
Right. But I mean, but you're right. You're exactly right. That like you're not spoiling the experience in reality when you
Right.
spoil sections of plot. Right. I mean, like, so is a story, is a book, is a movie just plot? No, not even close. You know what I mean? Like, um, so yeah. But I mean, I still do spoiler free reviews unless the book's like a couple hundred years old, and then
Yeah.
I don't obviously, so like, because then people don't get mad at me normally in that case. So,
Yeah.
um, but right, yeah. So, um, but I guess so. Then my question for you is, well, I know, did we talk about it while we were recording? You have a Conan story coming up. It's one of those short fiction things from Titan.
From Titan. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, but after that, also, what else do you have going on?
I'm still trying to figure that out. That's where I'm at now, is what to do. I've been working on Grimnir since 2014, so that's a good chunk of years. So trying to figure out what to do next. I have an idea that I might do some Roman fantasy.
Oh yeah, wait, I saw your blog post about that.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm leaning very heavily toward that one. It's one of those ideas that won't let go. Basically, Beowulf meets HBO's Rome. So
That
with
sounds
the
pretty
Predator
cool.
on the edge. So
That sounds pretty cool, I think so.
I think so too. I just got to figure out how to make it work.
Right, that's the
write
hard.
it. So.
So, okay. Oh, that's cool. And then and I think you told me before it was January 30th, I think, for that Conan story.
Yeah, it's called Shadows of Vengeance. It was originally published in Marvel's Savage Sword of Conan in 2019. Since that particular version of Savage Sword ended with the 12 issues, the way I look at it is all that art was just the opening band for my story. So, and they don't see it that way, but that's how I see it. So,
Well, that works.
yeah.
And then and by the time this video comes out, wow, the Doom of Odin will be out.
We'll
So
be out.
so everyone can go and read the whole series. I
Please,
have them behind me. I
please
guess.
go.
Yeah, there it is.
Here.
I need to get me one of them.
But it is a sweet hardcover too. It's like solid. It's well put together. So
nice. That's the way they should be.
That's what I think. So, but now it needs a paperback to go along.
I mean, I'm partial to mass market paperbacks too. I like cracking open like a musty smelling mass market paperback.
Yeah.
Like I got this like stained Best of Fritz library right here.
Oh yeah. Oh, the Dahl paperbacks. Those are great.
Yeah, I love Dahl. Yeah.
But this one still has the new book smell.
Yes.
Yeah.
I even have this old Ace. Is this Ace? Yeah, Ace paperback.
Oh yeah.
I have a couple of these.
Well, actually, probably the oldest. I got a Conan the Swordsman. So, and it's a bantam. So.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah. There's
Bloodstone.
Bloodstone. Nice. Yeah. That's a nice one too.
Yeah,
it still smells like a paperback. So.
Yeah. I'm glad I read Bloodstone recently, actually. So and so actually, that's a good question for you. Well, I have a couple questions. I don't know how much more time you have, but well, first off, actually, an observation. I thought it was funny. Or I think it's funny that Grimnir, he curses by saying "nar," which sounds kind of like no, right? I mean, like it sounds kind of like, oh, they put an R on the end of everything, anyways. So like that kind of sounds like no, but it's like it means corpse, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just like I think that's hilarious.
And I swept that from Tolkien.
Oh yeah, it took me a minute to realize. I was like, "nar." Yep. I was like, wait, that's like the naos and orc naos. Like, I mean, that just means dead thing, kind of like.
Yep.
So, like, it's a very appropriate curse. So, but anyways, that's not a question. Do you prefer to write short stories or novels?
I like the gratification of short stories. Uh, I like the complexity of novels.
Okay.
I tend to write long, so I, I that's why the Whetstone amateur stories were so tough, because you have to write in 2,500 words.
Yeah.
And 2,500 words for me, I'm just introducing something. So,
Right. Okay.
I'm used to writing 5,000 word chapters. So, and yeah, so I tend to get a little windy. So yeah, I mean, I love a really good short story, and the best short story I've ever read recently from a modern living author is uh, John Hawking's Vestments of Pestilence. That Blackgate's one of his archivist stories, I think is what he calls it. But every time I read that story, it's like I want to write a really well put together short story.
Uh-huh.
And so I sit down and try it, and like 20,000 words later, I might as well have the beginning of the novel. So.
Man, no, I read that Hawking story after you said that at some point, because you said it
Yeah.
several times on
Oh,
Discord.
I love that story.
Yeah, so that is a great story.
Yeah.
It's funny, I'm the opposite. I tend to go really short. Like, I mean, it's still a little bit of a challenge doing the Whetstone stuff, but normally when I write like a story for Whetstone, I'm very proud of it at the very end. I was like, wow, that's a great story. Surely they'll accept it. It's like, psych. But so like, but and then I guess my other question for you, but those also make sense too. Like that's the same thing I like about reading novels. I've
Yeah.
not been able to convince myself to write anything that long though yet. I've written a novella. That's the longest thing I've written. Um, but but the other question for you is, obviously I think you would put Robert E. Howard as number one if it wasn't obvious. Right.
Yeah.
But as far as other sword and sorcery authors go, whether it be classic or anything, how would you like rank them? I guess, or
Probably right after Robert E. Howard, I would put Carl Wagner.
that doesn't surprise me. Okay.
Yeah. Really? Oh, Carl Wagner's great. Oh,
Yeah.
he's a great sword and sorcery writer.
Mm-hmm.
He's really highbrow. His barbarians are only barbarian in their actions.
Yeah.
They think a lot. So,
Which
and
makes
Kane is just
villains.
great.
So, or anti-heroes, I guess, if you want to call
them. Yeah, he's very Byronic in his heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Then probably after that, I never really cared for Elric.
Yeah.
And I'm very hit or miss with Fafford and Grey Mouser. So, which everybody's like, oh God, oh no. Yeah, some of them I liked, some of them I didn't.
Do you have like an example of one you did like and one you didn't like?
I can't remember their I didn't like the one that had the skeleton people with invisible skin.
Oh yeah, that's the Swords of Lankhmar.
Yeah, I didn't care for that one. I liked the one they were going someplace and somebody decided to ambush them from either side of the street. I think it was Ilmet. I think that was actually Ilmet.
Yeah, Ilmet. That sounds like Ilmet.
I like that one. Okay. I mean, none of them are on my list of favorites ever. And to me, Elric is just so depressingly boring.
Oh, he's boring. Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, like, I can kind of see that.
It's just a skinny white dude with a sword.
It's a cool sword, though.
It is a cool sword. It could be wielded by anyone. It doesn't really matter who wields it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
and,
no.
I mean, I see the deconstruction. He's an elf. Let's make him evil.
Yeah, and he's elf. He's Conan, but not.
Yeah.
Like there's some interesting stuff. More. He was very young though when he wrote those. He was younger than I am. I mean, like, so. Could you argue that maybe that's why they're not good? I don't know. So like, but I enjoy Elric, so that's interesting. Not my favorite though. in fact, of the big three, right? If we did Howard, Leiber, and Moorcock, I put Moorcock at the bottom. But I still like Moorcock for his. I don't know. He's kind of goofy.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of goofy. Like I've read a few Pratchett's. I don't like humor,
okay.
that much humor in my fantasy.
That's the thing I like about Leiber though, is that he can be funny, and
Yeah,
then like Ilman Linkmar, for example, was a great example of swashbuckling, like smile on your face, like sword action type of things, and then it gets insane, like really dark, and then like by the end of the story, you're depressed but also whooping, like at least in my experience, right? So like I was like, that's awesome, like, and I've actually heard, I had a friend who compared Ilman Linkmar, kind of more one of in some cases a more Howard emotion type of Leiber, because Leiber's wife had just passed when he wrote
yeah,
that,
yeah,
and how Howard always has this teeming emotion in the stories because of his own issues, essentially,
yeah,
right? With his mom
yeah,
in particular. And so I was like, and that's an interesting comparison. I was like, I can kind of see that, because Ilmet Linkmar is just all over the place, and it's just awesome. I mean,
yeah,
it won, I think, a Hugo, and it deserved it in my opinion. But and so but I'm a huge fan of Leiber. I like Leiber a lot. If you pay
yeah.
attention to my channel, that's probably obvious. But like, so
See, and I guess after that, I would probably list Howard Jones. Because Howard Jones is just a good, solid author.
he
He
is.
deserves a whole lot more following than what he has. So,
I'd like to get
then,
him on my. I'd like to get him doing this exact thing we're doing right now.
oh, I'm sure you could. He's
Yeah, I'm sure I
asking.
could too.
He's very approachable.
Yeah. So I've talked with him on someone else's channel once,
Yeah,
when Lord of Shattered Land came out. But
yeah. Then I like Stephen Shrewsbury, and I like David West, who writes under James Alderdice. They're both really, really Conan-esque writers, really Howardian. So,
David, is that David J West?
David A or J, I can't remember which. Could be J, but yeah,
I can't remember. I think I know. Author of Let Sleeping Gods Lie. Is that the same guy? I don't
I
know.
think so. He's bald with a beard.
Yeah,
I know
I've met him,
everybody.
I think.
So,
No, he was gonna do a Kickstarter, I think, right? And he invited
yeah,
me
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah, I've talked to him
yeah,
because he lives in Utah, and I've gone to Utah conventions.
yeah, yeah.
So I have not talked with him as much. I've been to dinner with him, but there was like, I was like the weird one there because I'm not really an author, and yeah, so like,
As far as I know, he's a really affable sort of guy. So
yeah, no, yeah, he's great, and from the little bit I have been able to talk to him, it's funny, he's not very tall, but that's not important. But
it looks in the pictures that he's really short. So
same with
he likes
Christopher Rocco.
hats.
Christopher
So
Rocco is
I
really
can't.
short. So if you ever meet him, but not. That's funny because I haven't read anything by him, so now I'll have to. I have
he's.
one book by him, so I'll have to get that up. But.
There's several, I guess, indie authors that really should get a shot. I think Stephen Shrewsbury will be writing a Bran McMorn story for Titan, and but there's a couple. Ed Erdelac is another one. He's a solid writer. John Foltz.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm drawing a blank. I know if I start listing too many people, I'll forget somebody, and somebody will get their feelings hurt.
Yeah, right. But there's also quite a bit of good contemporary sword and sorcery authors.
There is.
I mean, a lot of them are at the indie level, of course, because that's where most of the genre is, right? But but there's lots of good stuff. I'm partial to like someone like Chase Fulmar, but that's because I like my stupid vocabulary type stuff.
I've never read his. I need to read that one. So
yeah, no, I like it. It's kind of Vancian, kind of Smithian, I guess if that's a word. So.
Yeah. See, and Vance is another one I never liked. I never liked Vance. I never liked the guy that wrote Amber. Zelazny.
We're gonna stop right here, Scott. No, we're gonna stop.
Flush.
No, that's funny because I mean everyone has their preferences and their styles, and so I can definitely see more of that. Well, reading your stuff, anyways. But like also like hearing these ideas. I mean, Zelazny is a little hit or miss for me in some ways, and Vance is a little too. But
somebody pointed out on a recent Facebook post of mine something that I think I had said a couple of years ago. I don't actually read or like a lot of fantasy. I don't read or like a lot of sword and sorcery. My preferred genre is ancient or medieval historical fiction. But I like Howard, and I like Harold Lamb. I like people like that. I like the stuff that's really deeply rooted in history. So I don't like secondary worlds. I don't like, with the exception of Tolkien. So
Right.
But
yeah, and you could argue whether or not his is secondary, I guess, if you really wanted to. But
well, I hate to cut this short, but I have a Chewini that has to go outside.
Okay, well, the Chewini is important, so not a very attack dog like Alan like thing I'd expect.
Oh, they are attack dogs.
Okay, well,
very small.
That's fair, but I don't know if they're very effective attack dogs.
Well, it depends on if you can yeet them up high enough to get to their throat.
Okay, that's fair, and then they probably won't stop once they start. So
I mean, no, he's angry all the time. He's like the Hulk, but
I'm always angry. So, okay, well, thanks, Scott, for joining. It's been fun. I appreciate you coming on, and I like talking about this stuff. So it's nice to have someone to talk about it with. And of course, everyone, you should go check out some of Scott's stuff. I mean, there's more even than what we have around us here. And then, of course, the Doom of Odin. Just now out.
This is the best. This is the best one.
Yeah. You should probably read books 1 and 2 first, though.
You should. You definitely need to read 2
book
first.
3 if you didn't want to read them, but
I mean, I think you could figure it out, but everybody keeps saying no. You probably need to read book 2. So.
Yeah. Yes, and you should anyways, because
you should.
It's good. So, anyways, yeah. Thanks for joining, Scott. I guess.
Thanks for having me. So.
And actually, real quick, do you have a website like anyone could visit, or like?
I have a blog, scottoden.wordpress.com.
Okay, I'll try to remember to link that below. So if anyone wants to go and look. So, but yeah, thanks again. So I'll just
thank you.